Today we're going to test out some sounds from the upgraded pedal board. Welcome back to the mini workbench. I've got the new pedal board set up here today just to do a few test sounds. The basic signal path is into your guitar. Well, speaking of guitars, it's the little Tele today. Made this snakehead Tele a number of years ago. Seems to work quite well. Straight into the pedal board, which goes in through the tuner here. Signal chain is various path, and then out through the stereo out that I'm using here, and straight into the Euphoria UMC 202 HD, which is a pretty good little budget, but not too cheap audio interface. That then goes via USB, obviously, into the PC. In the PC, I'm feeding that as a stereo signal left and right into OBS. Similarly, I've also got a mono microphone here that I'm speaking into, and that's going into OBS as a separate mono input channel. So I've got basically two audio input channels in OBS. One's a stereo with this, directly from this, and the other one is a mono directly from the USB mic that you're listening to. So that's a very simple setup, straight into USB, no mucking around. I'm not doing any processing USB, I just balance the levels a little bit so the guitar and the voice can both be heard. Alright, there's my completely clean tone. I have a mute on the tuning, so you can't hear that. But if I unmute it, all it was just the E, top E string. From the tuner into the compressor, into the two stages of drive, across then into the amp simulator, which is an AC30 style amp simulator. Then we go into some wet signals after the amp sim. So basically I'm using this as an amp head, and I've got the cabinet simulator turned off. So there is a cab sim mode in this, but of course I've got a cab sim over here. So this is basically working as a head. So from the head we come out effectively to what would effectively be a effects loop. So we've got the wet components in that. So what do you call these? These are called choruses. There's a chorus, then a tremolo, some delay, and reverb. And then we're splitting the signal into stereo through using the Vertigo tremolo pedal. It's from Source Audio. That's giving me the stereo split, so it's mono obviously up to this point. Stereo here, the phase of the stereo signals is at 45 to each other, so that I don't get phase cancellation back at the end when I make my mono signals, because I've got two mono outs here. So we'll talk about that in a second. But basically stereo signal into the delay, and then stereo signal from the delay into the reverb, stereo signal from the reverb into the Iconoclast cabinet simulator, and then stereo outs from the cab simulator gets mono summed using a proper mono summing cable, which has a resistive network in there that just protects the outputs. Don't use a Y to just connect two outputs together. Don't sum outputs together with a Y. But then, okay, once I've summed them, then I have a Y that splits them out into individual outs. So I've got two stereo identical split version of the same signal, and I can use those in a minute. We'll do this where we plug that into the interface, and we've got two equal mono signals into the interface. But right now we're in the stereo mode here, which actually is tapped off at this headphones output, and I can set the level here and I've got a pad switched in here, but I could actually run that down, but I prefer to have it up a little bit and use the pad on the input. So we're at instrument level with the pad, just to knock it back a bit. Alright, so that's completely clean. First level of gain. It's just a nice, solid, warm gain signal. Now I always like to have this reverb running, so that just gives me a bit of room. It's just a medium-sized room. Just softens it up nicely and it stops it being so dry. Basically, it's a wet effect, so that's what it does. So that's the first level of gain. Second level of gain, I would turn the AC30 on. Although sometimes I do operate just the AC30 because I quite like it's nice and bright. The good thing about this is I can actually, with different guitars, they interact a little bit differently with these different gain stages. So sometimes, you know, this works really well on a Strat. This one works really well on the Tele and anything with P90s, and sometimes works all right with putting humbucker pickup guitar into it. But at the moment, we've just got a single pickup Tele with a single bridge pickup. Okay, so let's use this signal a little bit. I'll go cleaner and just show you the chorus. So that's a reasonably nice sound. Ooh. Some beautiful chords there. We're playing jazz, I think, there. Keep it simple. That's the chorus sound. Let's get the chorus with a little bit of overdrive. So here, I'm just showing here, I'm using a very slow chorus. It's fairly deep. Is that sort of like the Barracuda sound? Maybe. From here, I then move into a tremolo. So my main tremolo is this bias tremolo, and the other option is the harmonic tremolo, which is really nice. But I do prefer the bias tremolo. This gives a nice movement. Sometimes I cut the depth of that back a fair bit to give me a nice sound. Now the other thing I do have always on is the hypergravity compressor. So it just flattens out the guitar level a little bit. I've got a fairly fast attack. There's a reasonable amount of sustain, and the level is just bumped up just a little bit over what the guitar would be putting out. So it just gives a little bit of extra, a bit of everything. Just supports having a nice sound. In the AC30. So I'm pretty happy with that sort of sound. Alright, just a little bit on the delay. The main delay, I'll turn the reverb off just to show you this delay. The main delay I use is a tape delay. Sometimes I also use the analog delay, which I think is pretty much a Dynacomp in this body. But the tape delay here, and I've got set up in stereo. You'll hear this quite distinctly, but the dotted eighth and the bouncing around between each side. So. So that's my main delay sound. I also have a big reverb sound that I run sometimes as well. So let's get that going, probably with 2 lots of gain. Demonstrating this, my guitar playing is not very fluid at all, and I must admit I haven't played for a while, so I'm a bit out of practice. So all excuses aside, that's my big reverb sound, which I quite like. Alright, well that's a simple run through of the stereo effects of, or the stereo sounds that are produced by this pedal board. I'll stop here, do some reconfiguration, and come back with some mono sounds. Well, after a minor reconfiguration, just to get the levels right and the 2 mono outs patched in, I had to cut the levels right back, which is I wasn't expecting, but we've got a nice level to demonstrate. Now, once I find my plectrum, we can start to have a listen. All right, so we've got the clean sound, which you're quite used to, but that's of course a mono version. Or 2 split versions of the mono signal. Now, The ensemble chorus. Not going to change the effect that much. The additional gain. AC30. This is the signal that I use the most when I'm playing this guitar. And basically the reason why I've got these two split monos is one goes to the DI box for the desk, sound desk. So basically I'm doing a direct sound. And then the other one goes to my local monitor. So that can either be my in-ears, and I can have mono or stereo in-ears, or I can just run that straight to you know, a small mono amp that I've got on the floor with me, facing right up and keeping the volume right down. So it's just me that can hear it. So we try to keep stage volume down as low as possible, even though we do use some auditory monitors, some open monitors, floor monitors, that's probably the right term. All right, so basic signal. Now, what does the tremolo sound like when it's mono? It just sounds like that, which is nice and serviceable. Very happy with that sort of sound. The harmonic tremolo for those interested. There are some other nice sounds in this pedal. I'll just switch this into its alternate mode so we can listen to some of the second layer of sounds. Now these won't be in stereo, but they just get a bit of a feel for the other options. I'm actually doing it the wrong way. Getting a feel for the other options that is available in this source audio. You can adjust all this with the app that comes with it. I think I've got a flanger and a phaser and a... I don't know what they all are, but some interesting swirly effect going on. And I think this first one is a bit of a length type effect. Alright, we'll return it to normal. I think you've got to do it that way. You wait for 5 seconds, and so when you're waiting for it, you want to switch quickly, it does take a little while, so that's probably one of the downsides of that particular pedal, but it's a great pedal. I just love its bias. Just a really nice tremolo. This is the delay. Now, delay was the other stereo signal that had a strong left-right effect, but when you put it in mono, you don't get that effect, so and of course the big, maybe if we do that, a bit of chorus, the big Alright, that's just a few samples of the mono sounds that I can get out of my board. Nice and simple board, easy to use, easy to manage, and certainly not overwhelming. I think if I was starting from scratch as a younger guitarist, I probably would go into a digital modeling type, I guess the Line 6 or the HX Stomp, those sort of things. I think I'd start there. But in my stage of life, and I've got some of these pedals, and some of them I've had for quite a long time, and the board's evolved over the years, and I actually enjoy doing that, changing up the pedal board every few years. I think it'll stay like this for quite a while. I don't think there's anything other fads of sounds that I necessarily need or want to use in the type of stuff that I do with my guitar playing. I really am a bit of a hack rhythm guitarist in the back of a band. So there are others that do the more celebrated guitar work. But yeah, I just like to participate and chug along and get some reasonably usable sounds out of this fairly simple, straightforward pedal board. So look, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching the video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want more content from the Mini workbench in particular. But I may have a bit more guitar content of maybe a few builds. I've got a neck replacement I did on something I built recently. I put a cheapy neck to solve a problem because I think I wrecked one of the necks that I built myself. But that could be a separate video coming up. A few other things. We may get some more work done on the Mini wood lathe that sits on this Mini workbench. But look, yeah, feel free to like and subscribe, make comments, and thank you for watching.